The most dangerous men never ask for help. They just look at you once and decide whether you live long enough to regret noticing them. The rain hammered against the tall windows of Velvet Note Jazz Lounge hard enough to blur the Manhattan skyline into streaks of gold and gray. Outside, black SUVs lined the curb beneath flickering streetlights while men in tailored coats stood beneath umbrellas pretending not to watch everyone who entered. Inside, soft piano music floated through crystal chandeliers and expensive perfume, but none of it could hide the tension sitting in the center booth near the stage. I noticed him the second I walked onto the floor with my tray. Every woman in the room noticed him. But unlike the others, I felt afraid first. Vincent Moretti sat alone in a dark charcoal suit with one hand wrapped around a glass of whiskey, his expression unreadable beneath the low amber lighting. He looked like the kind of man newspapers refuse to photograph directly. Calm. Controlled. Dangerous in a quiet way that made loud men seem harmless. The entire room shifted around him. Waiters lowered their voices near his table. Wealthy businessmen smiled too carefully when they approached him. Even the bartender kept glancing toward the booth like he was checking the weather before a storm. I tried not to stare. At 20 years old, I had learned that surviving New York meant minding your own business. Especially in places where rich men whispered behind locked smiles. "Claire," my manager hissed beside me. "VIP table needs another bottle." I nodded quickly and grabbed the champagne from the bar, forcing my hands to stop shaking. Double shifts at the lounge paid enough to cover community college tuition and half my rent in Queens. Barely. Which meant I smiled, carried trays, and ignored things I probably shouldn't see. That was the deal. Keep your head down. Get paid. Go home safe. But halfway across the lounge, a man brushed past me and slipped something folded into my apron pocket. I froze. He didn't stop walking. Didn't look back. My pulse spiked as I pulled the tiny note free beneath the tray. 3 words written in black ink. "Don't look up." My stomach tightened instantly. Every instinct screamed at me to walk away. Instead, I made the mistake of glancing toward Vincent Moretti's booth through the reflection in the mirrored liquor wall behind the bar. That's when I saw it. A silver flash beneath another customer's jacket near the piano stage. Not obvious. Not enough for anyone else to notice. But my father used to work nightclub security before he died, and when I was little, he taught me how to spot danger by watching hands instead of faces. The man near the stage kept touching his left sleeve. Nervous. Preparing. And he wasn't looking at the performers. He was looking directly at Vincent. My breathing slowed automatically. Fear does strange things. Sometimes it makes people panic. Sometimes it makes everything become painfully clear. Vincent lifted his whiskey glass slightly while speaking to the man beside him. At the exact same moment, the stranger near the piano started moving forward. Fast. I couldn't shout. Couldn't cause a scene. So I did the only thing my brain could think of. I grabbed the white serving towel from my arm and folded it once over my wrist before placing the champagne bottle on the edge of Vincent's table. A tiny movement. Barely noticeable. But it was an old silent warning signal my father taught me years ago. Danger approaching from your blind side. Vincent's eyes snapped toward my hand instantly. Everything about him changed in 1 second. The relaxed posture disappeared. The calm expression hardened. Cold. Focused. Deadly aware. He stood up so fast the whiskey glass tipped sideways across the marble table. Then the sound came. A sharp crack somewhere behind me. Women screamed. Glass shattered across the lounge floor. Music stopped mid-note. People ducked beneath tables while security rushed forward from nowhere like shadows finally stepping into the light. My tray slipped from my fingers and crashed beside my feet, but I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Vincent turned toward me through the chaos, those pale gray eyes locking onto mine with terrifying intensity. Not angry. Not confused. Certain. Like he had already decided I mattered now. And somehow, that frightened me more than the sound of the storm outside. The screaming blurred into the sound of rain against glass while security rushed across the lounge in dark suits and polished shoes. Someone grabbed my shoulder hard enough to spin me sideways just as another champagne glass exploded against the marble floor beside the stage. I stumbled backward into a booth, my heartbeat slamming so violently against my ribs it hurt to breathe. People were dropping low beneath tables, expensive dresses sweeping across broken crystal while the jazz band disappeared behind the curtains like ghosts fleeing a fire. Through all of it, Vincent Moretti never looked panicked. That terrified me most. He moved through chaos the way other men walked through sunlight. Calm. Focused. Certain. Two men appeared beside him instantly, both wearing black earpieces beneath neatly trimmed dark hair. Security. One stepped protectively toward Vincent while the other scanned the room with cold eyes that missed nothing. But Vincent ignored both of them. He was looking directly at me. Clear the exits, one guard barked into his radio. Nobody leaves. My stomach dropped. I should have run when I had the chance. Instead, I stood frozen beside overturned chairs and shattered crystal while strangers screamed around me. Then Vincent started walking toward me. Slowly. Deliberately. Every person in his path moved aside without being asked. He stopped less than 2 feet away, tall enough that I had to tilt my head up to meet his eyes. Up close, he looked even more dangerous. Not because of anger. Because of control. Rainwater glistened faintly along the shoulders of his charcoal coat where someone must have brushed against him during the chaos. His jaw remained perfectly still. But those pale gray eyes studied me like he was trying to solve something. Who taught you that signal? His voice was low and steady beneath the noise surrounding us. I swallowed hard. I do not know what you are talking about. It was a stupid lie. We both knew it immediately. His gaze dropped briefly to the white towel still hanging from my trembling fingers before lifting back to my face. You folded it twice over your wrist before placing the bottle down. His expression did not change. That signal died 15 years ago. Cold spread through my chest. My father taught me dozens of silent warning signs when I was a kid. He used to say crowds were safer when you learned how to speak without words. I never asked where he learned them. Suddenly, I wished I had. Claire, my manager shouted from across the lounge. Get over here right now. Vincent never looked away from me. You are not going anywhere. The words were quiet. Not loud. Not threatening. Somehow that made them worse. One of the guards stepped closer to Vincent and murmured something into his ear. I only caught 3 words. Possible second shooter. Every light in the lounge suddenly felt too bright. Too exposed. Vincent glanced toward the front windows where police lights flashed blue and red through the rain outside. Then he looked back at me again. Decision settled across his face instantly. Final. She comes with us. My mouth fell open. What? Absolutely not, my manager snapped while hurrying toward us. His confidence lasted exactly 3 seconds before one of Vincent's security men stepped into his path. Sir, the guard said calmly, this area is now under private investigation. Private investigation, my manager sputtered. This is my club. Vincent finally turned his head slightly toward him. One look. That was all it took. The manager stopped talking immediately. Silence spread between us again while thunder rolled outside over Manhattan. I took a shaky step backward. I did not do anything wrong. Vincent studied me for another long second before speaking. That is exactly why you are in danger now. My pulse stumbled. What does that mean? But he did not answer. Instead, he reached past me, picked up my soaked coat from the back of a nearby chair, and handed it to me himself. The gesture should have felt polite. Somehow it felt possessive instead. "Put it on, Claire." Hearing my name in his voice sent a chill down my spine. I had never told him my name. And judging by the look in his eyes, he knew that frightened me. The rain hit my face the second the lounge doors opened, cold enough to steal the air from my lungs. Black umbrellas appeared instantly around Vincent Moretti like shadows trained to move with him. Men in dark coats scanned the street while black SUVs waited at the curb with engines running beneath the glow of Manhattan traffic lights. I stopped just outside the entrance, clutching my coat tighter around myself while police sirens echoed somewhere farther downtown. "I am not getting into that car," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. Vincent paused beside the open SUV door and looked back at me. The city lights reflected silver across his eyes for half a second before disappearing again. "You think staying here is safer?" I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came out. Because deep down, I already knew the answer. The lounge behind us had become a crime scene in less than 5 minutes. Someone had walked in there tonight prepared to destroy lives, and somehow I had ended up standing in the middle of it. One of Vincent's men stepped closer and spoke quietly into an earpiece. "Street cameras are down on 47th. Vincent's expression hardened slightly. "Both intersections?" "Yes, sir." Something shifted in the air around the men instantly. Subtle. Dangerous. Like everyone had just realized the storm outside was bigger than they thought. Vincent looked at me again. "Get in the car, Claire." I hated that my body obeyed before my pride could argue. The SUV smelled like leather, rain, and expensive cologne. Warm air wrapped around me while the city blurred outside the tinted windows. Vincent slid into the seat across from me while 2 security vehicles pulled away behind us. Nobody spoke for the first several blocks. Manhattan passed outside in streaks of red brake lights and wet sidewalks crowded with umbrellas. My hands would not stop trembling. I tucked them beneath my coat sleeves, hoping nobody noticed. Vincent noticed anyway. He noticed everything. "How old were you when your father taught you those signals?" My throat tightened. 8. Former military. Security. I stared out the window. Nightclubs. Hotels. Places with drunk rich people who thought money made them untouchable. Vincent leaned back slightly, studying me in silence. What was his name? I hesitated. Something about answering felt dangerous. Like giving him pieces of my life one by one. Daniel Bennett. The reaction was small. So small most people would have missed it. But I saw the slight stillness in Vincent's face. The way his fingers paused against the silver watch on his wrist. "You knew him." It was not a question. Vincent looked toward the rain-covered skyline outside before answering quietly. "My father did." Cold spread through my chest again. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said carefully, "your father worked for people you never knew existed." I stared at him. My father fixed security cameras and threw drunk businessmen out of bars. One corner of Vincent's mouth moved slightly. Not quite a smile. That is what good men are supposed to look like from the outside. Silence settled heavily inside the SUV. I remembered my father teaching me card signals at the kitchen table when I was little. Remembered him checking locks 3 times before bed. Remembered the way he always watched mirrors instead of doors. At the time, I thought he was paranoid. Suddenly, I was not so sure anymore. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket, making me jump hard enough that one of the guards reached instinctively beneath his jacket. I pulled the phone out quickly. Unknown number. A single text message appeared across the screen. "You should not have warned him." My blood turned to ice instantly. Vincent saw my face change before I even handed him the phone. His eyes darkened as he read the message. The entire vehicle became silent. Dead silent. Then Vincent looked toward the driver. Change route. Sir. Now. The SUV turned sharply onto another street just as headlights appeared behind us through the rain. Too fast. Too close. Vincent's gaze returned to mine, cold and focused beneath the dim lights inside the vehicle. Claire, he said quietly, from this moment forward, you do exactly what I tell you. The black SUV accelerated through rain-soaked Manhattan streets while headlights stayed locked behind us like predators refusing to lose the scent. My pulse hammered louder with every turn the driver made. Water streaked across the tinted windows in silver lines, blurring traffic lights into red and gold smears that looked almost unreal beneath the storm. Nobody inside the vehicle panicked. That scared me more than the pursuit itself. Vincent sat across from me with one arm resting calmly against the leather seat while one of his security men spoke quietly into a phone near the front. 2 vehicles confirmed, the guard said. Dark sedan and black Range Rover. Vincent nodded once. Do not engage unless necessary. Necessary. The word sat cold in my stomach. I pressed my fingers tighter around my phone, still staring at the text message glowing on the screen like a threat burned into glass. You should not have warned him. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. Who are these people? Vincent's eyes lifted to mine. Men who do not like unfinished business. That explains absolutely nothing. To my surprise, something faint flickered across his face. Not amusement exactly. More like brief recognition that I was still trying to fight him despite being terrified. Good, he said quietly. Fear makes people careless. Anger keeps them sharp. Before I could answer, the SUV took another sharp turn downtown. The sudden movement sent me sliding slightly against the seat. Vincent reached forward automatically, steadying me with one hand against my arm. Warm. Firm. Controlled. He let go immediately once the vehicle straightened, but the brief contact left my heartbeat even more unstable than before. 20 minutes ago I had been carrying champagne trays beneath chandelier lights. Now I was trapped inside a moving fortress beside a man powerful enough to change traffic patterns with a single phone call. The realization made my chest tighten. I want to go home. Silence followed my words. The guards in front exchanged quick glances through the rearview mirror but said nothing. Vincent looked out toward the rain before answering. Your apartment is already compromised. Cold spread through me instantly. What does that mean? It means, he said calmly, someone entered your building 11 minutes after we left the lounge. My stomach dropped so hard it physically hurt. How would you even know that? Vincent finally looked back at me fully. Because the moment you warned me tonight, Claire, protecting you became my responsibility. The way he said it left no room for argument. No hesitation. Just certainty. Dangerous certainty. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time there was no message. Just a photograph. I opened it with trembling fingers and felt the blood drain from my face instantly. My apartment door. Slightly open. Hallway lights glowing faintly through the crack. Vincent took the phone from my hands before I could speak. The temperature inside the SUV seemed to drop 10 degrees as he studied the image. Increase speed, he said quietly. The driver nodded immediately. Outside, the city shifted as we crossed farther uptown where glass towers rose above the streets like silent giants disappearing into low clouds. Rain hammered against steel and marble while luxury high-rises glowed above the darkness below. Finally the SUV slowed beneath a private underground entrance guarded by iron gates and security cameras. 2 armed guards stepped forward the second we approached. One looked inside, saw Vincent, and opened the gates instantly. We descended into a private parking structure lined with black vehicles polished so perfectly they reflected the overhead lights like mirrors. My throat tightened as the engine shut off. Where are we? Vincent stepped out first before turning back toward me. Home, he answered. I stared at him in disbelief. That is not my home. Vincent held my gaze for a long second while rain echoed faintly above us through concrete ceilings. Then he spoke in the same calm voice that somehow frightened me more than shouting ever could. For now, it is the only place in New York where nobody can reach you. The elevator walls were made of black glass polished so perfectly I could see my own reflection trembling back at me. Rainwater still clung to the edges of my coat while the private elevator climbed higher and higher above Manhattan. Nobody spoke. Vincent stood beside me with one hand loosely in his pocket while two security men remained near the doors like statues carved from expensive suits and bad intentions. I counted the floors on the glowing silver numbers overhead just to stop my mind from unraveling completely. 42. 43. 44. My apartment in Queens barely had working heat half the winter. Meanwhile, this elevator probably cost more than my entire building. The doors finally opened into silence. Not normal silence. Wealthy silence. Thick carpet swallowed footsteps while soft amber lights reflected across marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. Manhattan stretched endlessly beneath the storm like a kingdom built from glass and electricity. For one disorienting second, I forgot to breathe. Vincent stepped into the penthouse first. You will stay here tonight. I stared at him. You keep saying things like they are decisions I already agreed to. Because they are. The calm certainty in his voice made irritation spark through my fear. You do not get to decide my life because someone sent a text message. Vincent removed his watch slowly and placed it on a marble table near the entrance. Expensive silver caught the low light for half a second before disappearing again. Claire, he said quietly, the men looking for you tonight are not impulsive teenagers with knives in alleyways. They are organized. Patient. And now they know your face. I crossed my arms tightly. I did not ask to be part of any of this. Something shifted briefly in his expression then. Not anger. Something colder. Regret maybe. Neither did your father. The words hit me harder than they should have. Stop talking about him like you knew him. Vincent held my gaze for a long moment before answering. I knew what kind of man he was. Silence settled heavily between us. One of the guards approached Vincent quietly. Perimeter secured. Vincent nodded once. No visitors unless approved personally. Visitors. The word made my stomach tighten again. Because suddenly this place did not feel like a penthouse anymore. It felt like a beautiful cage suspended 80 stories above the city. The guard disappeared down another hallway while I stood frozen near the windows overlooking rain-covered streets far below. Tiny headlights crawled through Manhattan. Traffic like distant fireflies. Somewhere down there, my normal life had vanished in less than 2 hours. Classes. Rent. Coffee from the deli near my apartment. None of it felt real anymore. You are shaking. I looked up sharply. Vincent stood closer now, though I had not heard him move across the room. I am fine. No, he said softly. You are in shock. Before I could argue, another woman entered from the hallway carrying folded clothes and a tray with tea steaming gently beneath warm light. She looked older, maybe late 50s, dressed elegantly in black with silver hair pinned neatly behind one ear. Unlike the guards, her eyes held kindness instead of calculation. Miss Bennet, she said gently. I prepared the guest suite for you. I blinked in confusion. Guest suite? Vincent answered before she could. You are not sleeping alone tonight. Heat rose instantly into my face. Excuse me. For the first time all evening, something dangerously close to amusement flickered briefly in his eyes. I meant the East Wing has security posted outside your room. My embarrassment collided violently with frustration. The older woman covered a smile politely while handing me the warm tea. You should drink this, dear. Your hands are freezing. The warmth against my palms almost hurt after hours of cold rain and fear. I hated how comforting it felt. Vincent watched me carefully from across the room while thunder rolled outside against the endless wall of windows behind him. Then his phone vibrated once in his pocket. He checked the screen. And whatever he saw made every trace of softness disappear from his face instantly. What happened? I asked quietly. Vincent looked up slowly, his eyes colder than before. Someone broke into your apartment 20 minutes ago. My breath caught. Was anyone there? No, he answered. But they left something behind. My fingers tightened around the teacup. What? Vincent's jaw hardened slightly before he spoke. A photograph of you walking into the jazz lounge tonight. I did not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photograph sitting inside my apartment like a message from someone patient enough to wait for me to panic. The guest suite alone was bigger than my entire place in Queens. Soft cream walls. Marble bathroom counters. A bed that looked untouched by real life. But none of it mattered. Luxury meant nothing when fear sat in the corner watching you breathe. Around 3 in the morning, I gave up pretending I would rest. The storm outside had softened into steady rain tapping gently against the massive windows overlooking Manhattan. I wrapped myself in the oversized sweater the older housekeeper had left for me and stepped carefully into the silent hallway. The penthouse felt unreal at night. Quiet lighting glowed beneath dark wood walls while distant city lights reflected across polished floors. Somewhere far below us, New York kept moving like nothing had changed. But my entire world had tilted sideways in less than one evening. I wandered toward the faint sound of music drifting through the penthouse. Soft piano notes. Slow. Almost sad. The sound led me toward a partially open doorway near the west side of the apartment. I should have turned around. Instead, curiosity pulled me closer. Vincent stood near the windows with one hand resting against a black grand piano. He was no longer wearing the expensive charcoal suit from the lounge. Just dark slacks and a black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled neatly to his forearms. The city lights behind him painted silver along the edges of his face while rain streaked softly across the glass beyond. For the first time since meeting him, he looked tired. Not physically. Emotionally. Like carrying silence had become heavier than carrying power. I stepped back instinctively before he noticed me, but the floor betrayed me with the smallest creak beneath my bare foot. Vincent looked over immediately. You should be asleep. His voice remained calm, though softer now in the quiet room. I crossed my arms against the chill. Apparently fear and luxury mattresses do not work well together. Something faint flickered in his expression again. That same almost smile that disappeared before fully arriving. He turned slightly toward the piano. Tea. I blinked in surprise. You drink tea at 3 in the morning? No, he picked up a glass from the piano instead. Whiskey. Amber liquid caught the city light as he swirled it once. I avoid sleep. The honesty in his voice caught me off guard. Vincent Moretti did not seem like the kind of man who admitted weakness out loud. My eyes drifted toward the framed photograph resting beside the piano. A younger Vincent stood beside another man around his age. Both smiling. Both alive in a way I had not yet seen tonight. Your brother? Vincent went still for half a second. Yes. He looks kind. The silence after my words stretched long enough that I thought maybe I had crossed a line. Then Vincent walked toward the photograph slowly. Luca was the best part of this family. Something in his tone made my chest tighten. What happened to him? Vincent stared out toward the rain-covered skyline before answering quietly. The kind of life I live does not reward kindness. I did not know what to say to that. So I said nothing. Sometimes silence feels more respectful than questions. Vincent finally turned back toward me, his expression unreadable again. You should not trust me, Claire. The word surprised me enough that I laughed softly despite myself. That is a strange thing for a man like you to admit. It is the truth. He took another slow sip from the whiskey glass. Men like me are dangerous to stand near. Eventually everyone around us pays for it. His voice held no pride. No drama. Just exhaustion. I studied him carefully beneath the low amber lighting. The terrifying mafia boss from the lounge suddenly looked less like a monster and more like a lonely man trapped inside armor too heavy to remove. And somehow, that felt even more dangerous. My gaze drifted back toward the piano. You play? Vincent looked at the keys for a long moment before answering. I used to. Before I could respond, his phone vibrated sharply against the marble table beside him. The softness disappeared from his face instantly. He answered with one word. Speak. Silence followed while someone talked on the other end. Then Vincent's entire posture changed. Cold again. Focused. Controlled. His eyes lifted slowly toward me across the room. Claire, he said quietly. Someone inside my organization leaked your location. The warmth disappeared from the room so quickly it felt like someone had opened a window into winter. Vincent lowered the phone slowly while rain continued sliding down the massive glass walls behind him. Somewhere below us, Manhattan still glittered beneath the storm like nothing dangerous could ever touch it. But inside the penthouse, the air had changed completely. What does that mean? I asked quietly. Vincent's eyes stayed fixed on something distant for half a second before returning to me. It means somebody I trusted decided money or fear mattered more than loyalty. The calmness in his voice unsettled me more than anger would have. He crossed the room toward a sleek black desk near the windows and pressed a button beneath the marble surface. Less than 10 seconds later, 2 security men entered the penthouse. One tall with dark hair and sharp features I recognized from the lounge. The other older, broad-shouldered, carrying the heavy silence of someone who had seen too much. Lock down every entrance, Vincent ordered. Nobody enters this floor without my approval. Yes, sir. And find out who leaked her location. The older guard hesitated carefully. You think it came from inside the house? Vincent's expression turned cold enough to silence the room. I know it did. The guards disappeared immediately, leaving the penthouse quiet again except for distant thunder outside. I wrapped my arms tighter around myself. This is insane. Vincent looked toward me. Yes. The simple agreement caught me off guard. Most people would tell me I am overreacting. Most people do not survive my world very long. I stared at him across the dimly lit room, trying to understand how my life had become tangled with his so quickly. 24 hours ago, Vincent Moretti would have existed to me only as rumors whispered online and stories people told after midnight. Now armed guards stood outside my bedroom because someone wanted me silenced. You keep saying your world like you were born trapped inside it. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Vincent went still. For a second, I thought he would ignore the question entirely. Instead, he walked slowly toward the rain-covered windows overlooking the city. My father believed power kept families safe, he said quietly. By the time I realized power destroys families too, it was already too late. His reflection blurred against the glass beside thousands of Manhattan lights below. He looked untouchable standing there. Like a king built from shadows and expensive suits. But something in his voice sounded tired enough to break my heart if I listened too closely. And your brother? Vincent's jaw tightened almost invisibly. Luca believed people could still change. Silence followed. Heavy silence. The kind that usually hides grief too deep for words. Before I could ask anything else, a sudden sound echoed through the penthouse. 3 soft knocks against the main entrance door. Every muscle in Vincent's body tightened instantly. He looked toward the hallway while one hand disappeared beneath the back of his suit jacket automatically. Controlled. Efficient. Dangerous. Stay here, he said quietly. The older housekeeper appeared from the kitchen hallway at the same time, concern flashing across her face. Vincent? He did not answer her. Another knock sounded through the penthouse. Slow. Deliberate. My pulse started climbing again. One of the security men approached from the hall and spoke quickly into his earpiece before stopping near Vincent. No alert from downstairs security, the guard said. Whoever it is bypassed the front desk. The room became silent enough that I could hear rain tapping softly against the windows 70 stories above New York. Vincent's eyes narrowed slightly. Open it. The guard moved carefully toward the entrance while another positioned himself between me and the hallway instinctively. My heartbeat pounded so loudly I could barely hear the electronic lock disengage. The door opened slowly. And for one terrible second, nobody moved. Then the guard near the entrance stiffened. Sir, he said quietly. You need to see this. Vincent stepped forward while I followed before anyone could stop me. A single black box sat outside the penthouse door beneath the soft hallway lights. No note. No name. Just a silver ribbon tied perfectly across the top. Vincent looked at it once and his expression changed instantly. Cold. Furious. Terrifyingly focused. Nobody touch it, he said sharply. My throat tightened. What is it? Vincent kept staring at the box without blinking. Then he answered in a voice so calm it barely sounded human at all. A message from someone who knows exactly how to make this personal. Nobody moved for several seconds. The black box sat alone beneath the soft hallway lights like something alive enough to breathe. Rain tapped steadily against the penthouse windows behind us while the entire floor seemed to hold its breath. Vincent stepped closer first. Calm. Controlled. But I noticed the slight tension in his shoulders now. The tiny fracture beneath all that perfect composure. One of the guards crouched carefully beside the box after checking it with a small handheld scanner from his jacket pocket. No explosives, he said quietly. No electronics either. Vincent gave one short nod. Open it. The silver ribbon slipped loose beneath the guard's gloved fingers. I realized then that my hands were shaking hard enough to hurt. The lid lifted slowly. Silence. Then the guard froze. Vincent's expression changed instantly the second he saw inside. Not fear. Something worse. Memory. What is it? I whispered. Nobody answered me at first. Finally Vincent reached into the box himself and pulled out a small silver lighter engraved with faded initials across the side. LM. The room became unbearably quiet. Even the rain seemed softer somehow. Vincent stared at the lighter for so long I started wondering if he had forgotten we were standing there. Lucas, he said finally. His voice barely sounded human anymore. Cold on the surface. Destroyed underneath. My chest tightened painfully. Your brother. Vincent nodded once without looking away from the lighter. He carried this every day since he was 17. The older housekeeper covered her mouth softly beside me. One of the guards swore quietly under his breath. That is impossible, he muttered. Vincent's eyes lifted sharply toward him. Nothing is impossible when betrayal starts inside your own walls. The words landed heavily in the room. I looked between the men surrounding us and realized something terrifying. Vincent did not know who to trust anymore. Not fully. Not even here. The penthouse suddenly felt smaller despite the endless glass walls and marble floors. Like danger had already slipped inside long before tonight. Vincent closed the lighter slowly in his hand before turning toward the windows overlooking Manhattan. The silver skyline reflected faintly across his expression while thunder rolled somewhere beyond the clouds. 20 years ago, he said quietly, my brother trusted the wrong person. Nobody interrupted him. He believed loyalty mattered more than fear. His jaw tightened slightly. He died because of it. Something in the room shifted after those words. Even the guards looked away respectfully. I stared at Vincent's reflection in the glass, and for the first time since meeting him, I understood something important. He was not afraid for himself. He was afraid of losing people again. The realization hit harder than it should have. Why are they doing this now? I asked softly. Vincent turned toward me slowly. Because somebody finally realized you matter to me. My breath caught. The honesty in his voice felt more dangerous than any threat tonight. One of the security men stepped forward quickly, speaking into his earpiece before looking toward Vincent again. Sir. We found the source of the leak. Every muscle in Vincent's body went still. Who? The guard hesitated. Marco Silva. Vincent's expression darkened instantly. Impossible. We traced communication records from inside the lounge. The guard swallowed carefully. He has been feeding information to the Romano crew for months. Marco. The same man who stood beside Vincent at the jazz lounge earlier. The same man who rode in the SUV behind us tonight. I felt sick. Vincent looked almost motionless now beneath the amber lighting. Too still. Like calm had become something sharp enough to cut. Where is he? Missing. The answer settled heavily through the penthouse. Vincent closed his eyes briefly before exhaling once through his nose. Controlled. Barely. Then his phone rang again. Unknown number. Every guard in the room stiffened immediately. Vincent answered without hesitation. Speak. Silence followed while someone on the other end talked quietly. I watched Vincent's face lose every remaining trace of softness piece by piece. When the call ended, he lowered the phone slowly. What happened? I asked. Vincent looked directly at me across the room, pale gray eyes colder than the storm outside. Marco took someone from your building in Queens tonight. My stomach dropped instantly. Who? Vincent's voice remained terrifyingly calm. Your best friend, Emily. Everything inside me went cold. No, the word left my mouth instantly, barely more than air. Vincent did not look away from me. Claire. No, my voice cracked harder this time. Emily was at work tonight. She should have been home hours ago. One of the guards lowered his eyes slightly, and that tiny movement told me everything before anyone spoke again. My legs nearly gave out beneath me. Emily had been my best friend since high school. The person who sat beside me during my father's funeral. The one who covered my rent twice without telling anyone after my mom got sick years ago. Sweet. Loud. Impossible not to love. And now she was somewhere in this nightmare because of me. We need to call the police. I looked desperately toward Vincent. Please. The silence that followed hurt more than shouting would have. Vincent stepped closer slowly, careful like I might break apart if he moved too fast. The police will not reach her before they move her again. Tears burned behind my eyes instantly. Then what are you saying? His pale gray eyes held mine steadily. I am saying I will bring her back myself. The certainty in his voice should have comforted me. Instead, it terrified me all over again. Because men like Vincent Moretti did not make promises unless they were willing to destroy something to keep them. He turned sharply toward the guards. Find Marco. Every man in the room moved immediately after that. Phones appeared. Orders were spoken quietly into earpieces. The penthouse transformed from silent luxury into something colder. Focused. Efficient. Dangerous. I stood frozen beside the windows while rain continued falling across Manhattan below us. My reflection looked pale and exhausted in the glass. 20 years old and suddenly standing in the middle of a war I never understood. Vincent approached me again once the others disappeared into different parts of the penthouse. Claire. I wiped quickly at my eyes before facing him. This is my fault. No, if I had not warned you at the lounge, you saved my life. His voice cut through mine quietly but firmly. Do not apologize for that. My chest tightened painfully. Emily is paying for it. Vincent looked at me for a long moment beneath the soft amber lighting. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out the silver lighter from earlier. Luca's lighter. He turned it once between his fingers before speaking. My brother used to believe protecting someone meant standing in front of danger for them. His gaze lifted back to mine. He was wrong. I frowned slightly through the fear. What do you mean? Real protection, Vincent said softly, means making sure danger never reaches them at all. Something raw moved beneath his calm expression then. Regret. Guilt. Maybe both. I realized suddenly that Vincent blamed himself for every person he had ever failed to save. Luca. His family. And now Emily. The weight of it sat behind his eyes like something permanent. Before I could speak again, one of the guards hurried back into the room. Sir. We tracked Marco's last signal. Vincent's entire focus sharpened instantly. Where? Old shipping district near Pier 47. Vincent nodded once. Prepare the cars. The guard disappeared again. I stepped forward immediately. I am coming with you. Vincent looked at me like I had lost my mind. Absolutely not. Emily is there because of me. Which is exactly why you stay here. Vincent, no, the word landed harder this time. Not angry. Final. He moved closer until only inches separated us now. Close enough that I could see exhaustion hiding beneath the cold perfection of his face. Listen to me carefully, Claire. His voice dropped lower. Softer. The moment you warned me inside that lounge, you became part of something. Dangerous. His eyes searched mine steadily. And whether you like it or not, I am responsible for keeping you alive now. My heartbeat stumbled painfully against my ribs. Because somehow those words felt less like obligation and more like a vow. Vincent reached up then, brushing one damp strand of hair away from my face with careful fingers. Gentle. Almost hesitant. The touch lasted barely a second before he stepped back again, cold control sliding back into place like armor. Lock the penthouse after I leave, he ordered the remaining guards. Then he looked at me one final time before turning toward the elevator. And Claire. I swallowed hard. What? Vincent's expression softened just enough to break my heart a little. Do not lose faith in me tonight.